Thank you, and thank you for the honor of sketching some context about the energy transformation that we are all creating together. Energy savings deliver more global energy services than anything else, including oil. And in the United States, since 1975, they've saved 30 times as much cumulative energy as all renewable growth has added. But efficiency is just getting started. In 1975, US government and industry all insisted that the energy needed to make a dollar of GDP could not fall. A year later, I heretically suggested it could drop 72% in 50 years. So far, it's dropped 56% in 41 years. But just the innovations made by 2010 can save another threefold, twice what I originally thought, at a third the real cost. And 7 years later, that looks conservative. Indeed, optimizing vehicles, buildings, and factories as whole systems can often make very big energy savings cost less than small or no savings, turning diminishing returns into expanding returns. Such integrative design is how our Empire State Building retrofit saved 38% of its energy with a 3-year payback. But 3 years later, our cost-effective Denver retrofit saved 70%, making this half-century-old government building more efficient than the best new US office. And that, in turn, is less than half as efficient as our own new net positive, no mechanicals office. Yet, its technologies existed over a decade ago. What mainly improved is not technology, but design, the way we choose and combine technologies. In industry and buildings, too, low-friction pipe and duct design could save roughly half the world's coal-fired electricity with extremely juicy returns. And yet, such rearrangement of designers' mental furniture remains largely unnoticed because it's not a technology, it's a design method. Both technology and design are moving efficiency into fast forward. Prior lighting improvements are being swept away, for example, as LEDs each decade get 30 times more efficient, 20 times brighter, 10 times cheaper. Saving an eighth of the world's electricity, they are stressing electric utilities, which since 1892 have sold electricity as a commodity, not the services customers want, like hot showers and cold beer. So efficient use doesn't cut utilities' costs, it cuts their revenues. The whole business model is upside down. What else changes this fast? Well, LEDs backwards are PVs, photovoltaics. In the past 5 years, their plummeting prices have made solar and wind power cost less than US power plants' fossil fuels, the dashed lines, often making old coal, gas, and nuclear plants shut down as uneconomic to run. Powerful disruptors are indeed converging on the electricity industry from at least 8 directions. These 8 Pac-Men of the apocalypse move fast. They don't just add, they exponentiate. They're not lone wolves, they hunt in packs. They multiply quickly, and they can gobble up half of utility revenues in the 2020s. Together, they're creating an alien competitive landscape faster than most utility cultures can cope. 3 years ago, all central power stations were called dinosaurs. Too big, too inflexible, not even relevant for backup power in the long run. Who said that? Not Greenpeace, but Union Bank of Switzerland. It's usually a good idea to sell customers what they want before someone else does, and customers are figuring out that they can use less electricity more productively and timely, produce their own, and even trade with each other. So Dutch customers can buy renewable electricity now directly from other customers on this peer-to-peer website of Van de Bron, literally from the source. One utility executive bought his electricity from the guy in the upper left because the price was right and he liked the cute piglet. Then he got a long handwritten Christmas card from his electricity supplier. What big utility can dream of such customer intimacy? U.S. wholesale electricity prices are now widely undercut by wind power and solar power, and even without their temporary subsidies, generally smaller than the permanent subsidies to non-renewables, unsubsidized wind and solar, graphed here as asterisks, are now winning in global markets at 3 US cents per kilowatt hour or less. During last year alone, Mexican solar power prices fell 37%, and European offshore wind prices fell 43%. When renewables get cheaper, we buy more, so they get cheaper, so we buy more. So renewables were 55% of the global generating capacity added last year. And yet, we are still told that only coal, gas, and nuclear stations can keep the lights on because they're 24/7, while wind power and PVs are variable and thus supposedly unreliable. But variable does not mean unpredictable. Here's how accurately the French grid operator, in one stormy winter month, forecast a day ahead the output of the country's wind farms. I'll bet they wish they could forecast demand that accurately. Indeed, we built the grid because no generator is 24/7. They all break. And when a giant plant breaks, we lose 1 billion watts in milliseconds, often abruptly for weeks or months. Grids manage this intermittence by backing up failed plants with working plants. And in exactly the same way, but often at lower cost, grids can manage the forecastable variations of solar and wind power by backing up those variable renewables with a portfolio of other renewables, all forecasted, integrated, and diversified by type and location. So in Texas, whose grid has no big hydro dams and is not connected to the rest of the United States, a 2050 summer week of expected loads can get much smaller and less peaky with efficient use. Then we can make 86% of the annual electricity with wind and PVs, and 14% from dispatchable renewables. This 100% renewable supply can then match the load by putting the surplus electricity into 2 kinds of distributed storage worth buying anyway: ice storage, air conditioning, and smart charging of electric autos, then recovering that energy when needed and filling the last gaps with unobtrusively flexible demand. Only about 5% of the annual renewable output is left over, so the economics should be excellent. Some grid operators do this today. In 2014, Germany met 27% of its annual inland electricity needs from renewables, Italy 33%, but 4 other European countries with modest or no hydropower were about half renewably powered, adding no bulk storage and with superior reliability. For Denmark and Germany, about 10 times better than America's. In 2015, 50 Hertz got 49% of its electricity from renewables, 3/4 of them PV and wind. The operators have simply learned to run these grids the way a conductor leads a symphony orchestra. No instrument plays all the time, but the ensemble continuously makes beautiful music. Electric vehicles will make power grids more flexible while saving money, oil, air, and climate. Their global sales grew 60% in 2015, 42% last year, when China sold more than the world sold in 2014, and launched 5 years of further 10-fold growth. Respected forecasts of disruptive oil savings, set to recrash world oil prices in 6 or 8 years, do not yet count India, Germany, Holland, targeting 100% EVs by 2030. And they don't count four accelerators of EV growth now in play: ultralighting, which saves up to 2/3 of the costly batteries, more on that in a moment; Febates, which helped make 1/3 of Norway's new cars electric, 50 times the US share, and they're running in 5 other countries, plus soon India; repaying up to half of EVs' total cost by monetizing their value to the power grid; and new mobility business models that strongly favor electric traction. As batteries' nearly fourfold, or GM says fivefold, price drop of the past 5 years continues, EVs in the 2020s will cost the same as today's gasoline cars. Their abundant cheap batteries imply distributed solar everywhere, gas industry distress, and a far more flexible grid. EVs can become cheaper and spread faster if we first make autos 2 or 3 times more efficient. The carbon fiber electric cars that I invented 25 years ago, we designed 17 years ago, and Toyota used our methods 10 years ago to design as a 3-fold lighter plug-in hybrid, actually entered the market in Germany 4 years ago. And the carbon fiber electric car I drive is already profitable. Its carbon fiber is paid for by needing fewer batteries. An improved manufacturing process that my team developed made this carbon cap, a test piece, in 1 minute a decade ago. And we sold the technology to the German Tier 1 press maker Diefenbacher. Now it can make a complex 2x2 meter carbon fiber part in 1 minute. Making all US autos this way would save 1.5 Saudis, or half an OPEC, at a cost below $10 per saved barrel, because the carbon fiber is paid for by radically simpler automaking with 80% less investment and by 2/3 fewer batteries. These 2 new technologies, lightweighting and electrification, plus 3 new business models, are rapidly morphing autos from pigs, personal internal combustion gasoline steel-dominated vehicles, to SEALs, shareable electric autonomous lightweight service vehicles. In May, India adopted our government industry workshop's blueprint for a radical mobility transformation competing with China's. The US will reach peak car ownership in the next 5 years. IT-enabled public transit is rapidly improving, and redesigned cities are achieving the same access with 2/3 less driving and 1/3 less concrete. Even 6 years ago, just by combining vehicle, building, and industrial efficiencies, our business book, Reinventing Fire, rigorously showed how to triple US efficiency and quintuple renewables by 2050, needing no oil, coal, or nuclear energy, and 1/3 less natural gas, while saving $5 trillion, growing the economy 2.6-fold, strengthening national security, and cutting fossil carbon emissions 82 to 86%. This needs no new inventions and no acts of Congress, but with smart city and state policies could be led by business for profit. And that is now happening. This US energy transformation is on track in the marketplace. These best buys are also the most effective solutions to big global problems that hazard every country's security and prosperity. Focusing on such shared outcomes, not diverse motives, can win wide political support. Stimulated by those US findings at the G20 10 months ago in Hangzhou, China's National Development and Reform Commission published its roadmap for China's energy revolution, aided by Berkeley Lab Energy Foundation China and Rocky Mountain Institute. This foundational strategy document details how by 2050 China can save about $3.5 trillion, run a 7 times bigger economy using today's energy 7 times more productively, shift supply 2/3 off fossil fuels, emit 42% less carbon, burn 80% less coal, and get 13 times more GDP from each ton of fossil carbon. If we extrapolate these on-track US findings and strategically adopted Chinese findings to the other half of the world, cross-checking against similar results from European Climate Foundation, the world could achieve about a 2 Celsius degree climate trajectory while providing the same or better energy services roughly $18 trillion cheaper. Then reinvesting in natural systems carbon removal could attain about a 1.5 degree trajectory, still with trillions of dollars left over, plus huge hidden benefits. Making climate protection not costly but profitable should simplify the politics. As the energy value proposition transforms, markets can flip with breathtaking speed. On New York's Fifth Avenue in 1900, you must look hard to find the first car. Just 13 years later, you must look even harder to find the last horse, if there even is a horse. The horse and buggy industry thought it had many decades to adapt, but Henry Ford's Model T got 62% cheaper in 13 years. Car-owning households soared from 8 to 80% in a decade, 3/4 financed by newfangled car loans. Today, PV modules just got 80% cheaper in 5 years. 3/4 of U.S. rooftop solar is innovatively financed, and Ford's and Edison's industries are merging to eat Rockefeller's oil industry. Today's horse and buggy industries are forgetting that the pace of transformation is set not by incumbents but by insurgents, uninhibited by incumbents' business models, legacy assets, or cultures. And investors flee even before customers do. Capital markets keenly sniff out disruption. And once they think you're in or even headed for the toaster, they don't wait for the toast to get done before they decapitalize you and invest in your successors. That's how a 2003 automotive startup called Tesla Motors surpassed the market cap of Ford and General Motors while selling 1% as many cars. As Jack Welch said, if the rate of change on the outside is greater than the rate of change on the inside, the end is near. So to conclude, today's energy transformation is not just fundamental, it's elemental. The first industrial revolution was the age of carbon, creating our prosperity and the world's mightiest industries from coal and oil and gas. But now that obsolete age of carbon is giving way to the modern age of silicon. Silicon microchips, telecommunications, and software turn people from isolated to networked and systems from dumb to smart. Silicon power electronics make electricity interconvertible and precisely applicable, replacing fiery molecules with obedient electrons. And silicon solar cells enable the ascent of energy from mining the fires of hell to harvesting the breath and radiance of heaven.